What is up, everybody? SchwayZ here, and today we're doing a comparison of some of the two most affordable new crossovers you can buy. We're talking 2024 Chevy Trailblazer versus 2024 Chevy Trax. Now, before we dive into today's video, I do want to extend a huge thank you to Jerry Seiner Chevrolet of downtown Salt Lake City for giving me the opportunity to review this vehicle for y'all today. If you guys are in the market for a new or used vehicle, they have a large assortment of different inventory. Make sure you reach out to them and let them know that SchwayZ sent you. Alright, so I figured this video would be informative for those of you that are shopping around for an affordable crossover and are debating whether you should spring for one of the cheapest Chevy crossovers you can buy, which is the Trax, or if you should spend a little bit of extra money and get the Trailblazer, because this is just a few grand more expensive than this one. And we're going to answer the question today, is this vehicle worth the premium? So we're going to do an exterior interior walk around, show you some of the features, then we'll finish off with my recommendation between the two. Now, both of these vehicles share the same trim level. They're both the LT, which is kind of the middle of the pack of all of the trim levels available for both these vehicles. So I figured this would be a really good comparison, showing you LT Trailblazer versus LT Trax. Now, starting off with the front end of the Trax, you can see it's got a pretty good styling to it. Very smooth, very reminiscent of other Chevy products. You've got LED daytime running lights up front. Your LED headlights are actually located down below. These are automatic headlamps, so they'll turn on when it's dark, and they're also automatic high beam. You also have this cool chrome strip that extends from the passenger to the driver's side that separates the two grille setup, kind of similar to what you have on the Chevy Traverse. And then down at the bottom, you got this nice brushed aluminum piece that extends all the way across the bottom end. Now, coming across the side of the vehicle, this vehicle comes with 17-inch aluminum wheels. These are 225mm wide, and you've got this black plastic trim piece extending along the side of the wheel well, and a little bit more black trim pieces along the bottom. This one being the LT trim level, you do have body painted mirror caps. In case you're wondering about the color, this is called Harvest Bronze Metallic, and it's kind of like this dark brown color. It looks pretty good overall. Now, in terms of the shape, this thing to me looks pretty similar to a traditional crossover. You got a sloping roof line, but at the same time, the height of this vehicle is more of like what I would call a hatchback, because my chin pretty much ends right at the top of this roof rail. So it's a little bit of a shorter vehicle overall, and it's kind of long. So it's almost like a lifted sedan, but the shape overall does look like a crossover. Now, coming across the rear end, you don't have LED tail lamps, but I do like how these tail lights wrap around the fender. And then you've got a spoiler up top as well, and a pretty sloping roof line. Now, down at the bottom over here, you've got a little bit more of that brushed aluminum, along with your blacked out Trax and LT badge as well. And I think it's a pretty attractive crossover. I think it looks a little bit better than some of its competition. Now, although this is a little bit shorter, the ground clearance here is just about 7.3 inches, which is a little bit better than a sedan, but a little bit worse than your typical crossover. Now, coming over to the Trailblazer, the front end actually looks pretty similar to the Trax. It's kind of hard to tell the difference, although this I would say looks a little bit boxier overall. You still have that chrome trim piece that extends from passenger to driver's side, and this also has LED daytime running lights and LED headlights, and the shape is actually pretty similar to that in the Trax. The difference here though is if you pick any trim lower than the LT, these daytime running lights are not going to be LEDs, whereas on the Trax they actually are. So it's a little bit odd. Even though the Trailblazer is a little bit more expensive, you do have LED daytime running lights as standard on the Trax versus optional on the Trailblazer. But this one being the LT trim, it does come with that. It's a pretty good looking vehicle from the front end. Now, coming across the side, you also have 17-inch wheels here with just a little bit of a different spoke design. These are also 225mm wide tires, and you also have that plastic cladding across the wheel well and all the way across the rear end. You do have this sharp body line near the bottom of the door and another one located up top. And overall, coming over to the side of the vehicle, this is definitely a boxier shape. In fact, this is a taller SUV as well. When I come up close to it, this top is pretty much where my forehead is rather than my chin. So it's a few inches taller than what you'd find in the Trax. So if you guys want a more boxier looking SUV, the Trailblazer is probably the better option. I also like the fact that you have this black trim piece that extends all the way into the rear windshield, and you still have that rear spoiler as well. It's just not as sloping of a roof line as you find in the Trax. Here you've also got body painted mirror caps, and this color, in case you're wondering, is called Sterling Gray Metallic, and it looks pretty good, although I think I like the bronze on the Trax a little bit more. Now, coming over to the rear end, a more traditional setup with your taillights. They aren't LEDs either, but they don't have any type of funky shape to them. But I do like the overall look of the rear end with these soft body lines that extend across the passenger to driver's side. No blacked out badging over here with the LT and the Trailblazer, but you have a very similar aluminum bezel design to the rear end. And I think it's a pretty boxy, handsome looking SUV. I think it's actually done pretty well for the brand. Now, it doesn't necessarily look at all like the previous generation Trailblazer from the 2000s, but that shouldn't take away from the styling of this vehicle. Now, in terms of ground clearance here, it's a little bit more than that in the Trax. We're talking 8 inches on the Trailblazer. Now, another thing to point out is because of this boxier shape, this vehicle does look like it's a little bit shorter than the Trax, and actually it is. This is about 178 inches versus this is about 174. So we're talking about 4 or 5 inch difference between the Trax and the Trailblazer, with the Trailblazer being a little bit shorter. All right, now is actually a good time to hit pause and hit the subscribe button so you guys can stay on top of all of the weekly videos. That really helps me out a lot to bring more cool content like this onto the channel. All right, now let's get back to the video. All right, next up, let's compare the powertrain between these two. Starting off with the Trax, what we have under here is a 1.2 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder engine that produces 137 horsepower and 162 pound-feet of torque. Now, all that power is sent through a 6-speed automatic transmission. It's a conventional torque converter automatic, and this thing will get 28 in the city, 32 on the highway. Now, the Trax is only available in one configuration, and that is front-wheel drive. Now, jumping over to the Trailblazer, you'll find very similar numbers, and the reason is because it's the exact same engine. Yes, the Trailblazer was one of the first with a 1.2 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder, producing the same amount of horsepower and torque, except the difference here is you cannot get the Trailblazer with a 6-speed automatic transmission. The only transmission available on this particular engine configuration is a CVT. Now, the downside to that is CVTs tend to be a little bit more droney and maybe not as powerful or peppy when you're accelerating, but the fuel economy is a little bit better. We're talking 30 in the city, 31 on the highway for a combined 30 mpg. Now, one big advantage of the Trailblazer is you can actually get this in either front-wheel drive like the Trax, or you can get this in all-wheel drive. If you do get the all-wheel drive version, you'll actually get a more powerful 1.3 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder engine that produces a little bit more horsepower at 155 and 174 pound-feet of torque. That one will have slightly compromised fuel economy at 26 in the city, 29 on the highway for 27 combined, but instead of the CVT, you're going to get yourself a 9-speed automatic transmission. However, if we're talking powertrain comparison and which one I would pick if we're choosing the front-wheel drive configuration, that would be the Chevy Trax, because this one does not come with a CVT transmission, and personally, I'm not the biggest fan of CVTs. I just feel like they're not as powerful, and they also sound pretty bad. All right, now let's compare the interior. Starting off with the Trax, when I reviewed this vehicle earlier, I was actually very impressed with the interior. There's a lot of bang for your buck here. Now, let's just show off what I mean by that. First off, starting off with the door panel, this is all hard touch plastic, but that's to be expected. I do like this leather touch surface over here. It is fake leather, but it does feel really nice. This is a little bit of a harder touch surface. It's a rubberized material. I wish it was a little bit softer, but that's all right given the price point. You do have automatic door locks, automatic windows, and then you've got a little water bottle compartment over here. The standard Trax comes with a 4-speaker setup. This one, being the LT, comes with a 6-speaker audio system. And then I do want to point out this nice use of textured plastic over on the door panel. Just makes it look a little bit more premium on the inside. Now, taking a look at these seats, I do like the way they're designed. You've got this textured cloth material in the middle with a little bit of contrast cloth and some fake leather, along with some contrast stitching. And I do like the fact that this is a leather headrest as well. So pretty nice that they have a little bit more color pop on the interior of the Trax. The driver's side is 6-way manual adjustable. The passenger side is 4-way manual adjustable, and you've got a tilt and telescoping steering wheel. Now let's climb inside and talk about some of the tech here. Now, starting off with the dashboard, I do like the different use of color and materials. As you can see, you have some blue accents with a little bit of textured triangles on the plastic, and then up above you, all across the dash onto the passenger side, I do like this textured material. It's kind of hard to tell on camera, but it's not just a piece of plastic. It's got a little bit of design to it. And then I also like the fact that this fake aluminum bezel that extends all the way from the steering wheel onto the passenger side turns into this textured material over there near the passenger air vent. Just makes it look like a little bit more of a premium interior. This isn't just your entry-level cheap car when you have some of this cool contrasting color and the different materials on the inside. Very impressed with that. Now, the steering wheel is plastic, unfortunately, so it feels a little bit cheap in the hands. On the left-hand side, you have your controls for your cruise control. On the right-hand side is how you regulate this 8-inch instrument gauge cluster display. It's fully digital. Now, this is not standard on all trim levels, but this particular LT does come with this standard, and it's pretty simple to use overall. There's not too much functionality, but you can cycle through your various auto settings and your phone settings as well. So pretty intuitive screen and very easy to use. Now, this, on the other hand, is an 11-inch touchscreen display, and this is standard on the LT. The base trim level comes with an 8-inch touchscreen, but this one is 11, and it's really nice. Very easy to use, very easy to understand, pretty quick to respond. It's not as quick as some of the other high-end Chevy products I've reviewed, but plenty of stuff here. You've got in-house Wi-Fi. This does come with wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. You can also pull up your typical trip information, which includes your fuel economy and how many miles you've driven. And as you can see, it's not the quickest, but I did just turn this vehicle on, and it's not bad. Again, considering the price point of this vehicle, to have an 11-inch touchscreen is fantastic. You do have a physical volume knob and a power button up there as well. And then down below that, you got 2 air vents. On the left-hand side is your push to start, so you do have keyless start-stop. That is not standard, but it is included on this LT trim level. Down below that, you've got your air vent control, so you've got automatic climate control. This is only single zone climate, but since this vehicle is so small, I don't think dual zone climate really makes sense, but that is an optional feature that you can get. You've also got physical buttons to control where your fan is blowing, and you've got your controller over here for your fan speed. Down below that, you've got a cigarette style power outlet and 2 USB ports, and this compartment is just a storage compartment in this LT trim, but you can get this optional with a wireless charging pad if you want it. You've also got your lane centering button over here to turn it on and off, and your auto start stop. This is a rubberized gear selector. Feels a little bit cheaper, but it's not too bad. And then you got 2 cup holders with a little compartment over here for a phone or a wallet. Moving further back, electronic parking brake, another little storage compartment. And then I will complain that this is a little bit on the harder side. It's not leather wrapped, it's more of that rubberized material. But opening it up, it's got a pretty decent amount of space in here, but there's no USB ports or anything like that. Coming over to the passenger side, you do have a pretty large glove compartment. And then moving up above you, you've got your typical rear view mirror, your light controls, and then you can get the LT option with a sunroof, but my particular vehicle does not come with it. Now, jumping into the second row of the Trax, all hard touch plastics up here, and I will complain, this is hard touch plastic here, so if you're a second row passenger, you're really not going to get any elbow comfort in the second row of the Trax. No leather materials here, but again, this is an entry-level vehicle. You do have a speaker grill back here, which is nice in the door. You got that same type of textured material over here, along with some of that leather surfaces on the side, and you still have a leather headrest. Now, one thing that's missing back here, you don't have any type of center armrest, but that's kind of common amongst entry-level vehicles. One thing I really enjoy about the Trax is just the amount of legroom back here. Now, Chevy says you've got about 38.7 inches of legroom behind the first row. It's a very comfortable place to sit. There's also no transmission tunnel because this is front-wheel drive, and so you could likely fit 3 people back here. Now, there's no rear air vents back here, but you do have 2 USB ports, and you got a pretty large compartment over here where you can store your phone or your wallet. The other thing to note is, even though this is a compact crossover, I've got pretty good amount of headroom above me. I'm talking 2 or 3 inches. I'm about 5'9". Climbing into the trunk, you don't have any type of power-operated trunk here, but a pretty good amount of space behind the second row. Chevy says you have 25.6 cubic feet of space back here, and then if you fold down those second row seats, you can get upwards of 54.3 cubic feet of space. So lots of space in the back. You've also got this net over here where you can store things like groceries so they don't roll around. And then this one does come with this cargo cover, but that's not a standard feature on every single Trax. Underneath this floor, you actually have a compact spare tire, but there's not much space underneath there for anything else. All right, now jumping inside the Trailblazer, you'll find that some things are better, but some things maybe are a little bit worse than the Trax. First off, starting off with the door panel, same hard touch plastic up top. That's to be expected. I do kind of like this gloss black piece that extends all the way across the door panel. Looks pretty good, although I do like the texture of the Trax a little more. What's weird here is this is kind of like a textured cloth material. It's a little bit different than stuff I've seen in other vehicles, but it looks pretty good. Not as nice, I would say, as the leather inside of the Trax. Same material over here where you're resting your elbow. A little bit on the harder side with this rubberized texture. I wish it was a little bit softer. Honestly, this over here would be probably a better idea. You still have automatic windows, automatic door locks, and automatic mirror controls. And then down here, one big difference between the Trax is you do have a power-operated liftgate, which we'll show off when we get into the trunk area. A little bit of a larger compartment here for a water bottle and a storage compartment. And then this vehicle does come with a 6-speaker audio system as standard. Now, jumping inside, I do like the style of the seats, but I will say I think the Trax had slightly better use of materials because it had a leather headrest or a pleather headrest, and this one is just cloth. Although I do like that material. It's the same one that you find on the door panel. Looks pretty good and contrasts pretty well, but I wish they threw in some leather to make it look a little bit more premium than it is. Now, one thing to point out is the LT trim level on the Trailblazer comes with 6-way power adjustable seats and 4-way manual seats. On the Trax, that is an optional feature that you can get, but it doesn't come standard on the LT. The Trailblazer also comes with a tilt and telescoping steering wheel. Now, jumping inside of the Trailblazer, one of the first things you'll notice is the seating position. This feels like you're sitting in a typical crossover SUV versus the Trax. It feels more like you're sitting in a sedan. It kind of feels a little bit lower, a little bit more sloped back versus this kind of feels a little bit more like you're on top of the vehicle versus inside of the vehicle, if that makes any sense. Now, jumping inside, the dashboard may look very familiar because it almost looks identical to the Trax. Lots of similar features here, but I will say I do like the use of colors inside of the Trax a little bit more. Trailblazer doesn't have any type of blue accents. It does have this silver piece, but it just doesn't look as funky on the inside. Also up here, you don't have any type of textured material. This is hard touch plastic. It does have a little bit of a texture to it, but it doesn't have that cool factor that you found inside of the Trax. Same over here, again, a little bit more of that gloss black plastic you found on the door panel, but it doesn't have any kind of cool texture to it. I do think that over here you have a little bit of a different type of material, kind of like almost looks like a cloth, but this is clearly hard touch plastic material. Makes it look a little bit nicer on the inside, but for the most part, the interior looks kind of like a sea of black plastic, and that's something I really liked about the Trax. So it's a little bit funner on the inside of the Trax as compared to the Trailblazer. That said, I do like the fact that this LT trim level comes with a leather wrapped steering wheel. That's a really nice feature and makes it feel a little bit more premium on the interior. Now, another advantage about the steering wheel is it is heated. So that's something that the Trax in the LT trim level did not have. On the left-hand side of the steering wheel, you have your buttons to control your cruise control. On the right-hand side is how you control what looks to be a very familiar screen because this is the identical 8-inch display that you found on the Trax. Very similar type of usability here. It's the exact same UI. So if you've used one, you've used them all. And it's a pretty nice screen. I like that they've included that over here on the Trailblazer as well. Now over here, a very familiar 11-inch touchscreen display, identical to what you found in the Trax. Again, it works just about as quick as the other one. And you know, it's pretty easy to use. You still have that same physical volume knob. Down below that, again, 2 air vents. And then again, this one does come with the keyless start-stop, just like the Trax. Then you can see that use of material that I was talking about, that kind of cloth-looking material. But I just wish it was a little bit more colorful. Down below that, you have pretty much the identical set of controls as what you'd find in the Trax. The difference here is this particular vehicle does come with heated seats where the Trax did not. Your fan speed is located on the right. Your temperature control is located on the left. Now, down below that, same 2 USB ports and cigarette style power outlet that you found in the Trax, except this one does come with a wireless charging pad. So the LT trim is a little bit more premium inside of the Trailblazer. I do like this netted material over here on the left and the right hand side. Moving further back, this is a leather wrapped shift knob, so it feels a little bit more premium. You also have the same buttons to turn on and off your lane keep assist, your auto start stop, and your traction control. You got 2 cup holders, same little compartment in between for you to put like your phone or your wallet, electronic parking brake, pretty much a same size storage compartment over here. And then this is pretty much the same material you found in the Trax. It's not leather wrapped. I wish it was. It's kind of this hard rubberized material. Opening this up, you've got this 2-tier compartment over here where you can open this little tray up and it reveals a little bit more space. It's pretty much identical to the size in the Trax. Now over onto the passenger side, opening up your glove compartment, pretty much the same size as the Trax. And then up above you, your rear view mirror, you got your lighting controls, and then there's no sunroof on this either, but you can get that as an option. Now jumping into the second row of the Trailblazer, a couple things to point out. First off, hard touch plastic all up top. This is no longer that cool gloss black material either, but this is a little bit better than the Trax. This is actually that same rubberized material that you found in the first row instead of just hard touch plastic. You also have a small compartment for your water bottle. There's your speaker grill right there, and you of course have automatic windows. Now, jumping inside, again, the seats are nice, but I like the Trax a little bit more. I do like that cloth material they have and that contrast stitching they have on the headrest, but it's pretty plain. Although a big advantage here, you do have a center armrest with 2 cup holders back here. Now, climbing inside, it does almost seem like the Trax had a little bit more legroom, although, you know, the angle maybe was a little bit more on the Trax, and that's why it felt that way. In fact, the Trailblazer has a little bit extra legroom. We're talking 39 inches, but it just doesn't look as large as the Trax. Of course, you don't have any rear air vents either on the Trailblazer, but you do have 2 USB ports back here, and you've also got a household power outlet, which is a nice add-on that they didn't have in the Trax. You've also got a surprisingly deep compartment over here where you can store your phone. I mean, this is a large phone, and it's pretty much fitting right in there, so that's pretty nice to have. Also, no hump in the middle, but this is the front-wheel drive version of the Trailblazer, so that's kind of to be expected. And then I would say headroom is pretty similar to the Trax. I got about 2 or 3 inches above my head. It's not that much better than the Trax, considering this is a taller vehicle than that one is. Now, jumping in the back, you'll see the big advantage to the Trailblazer in the 1LT trim compared to the Trax in the 1LT, and that is this power-operated liftgate, and you can adjust the height of that on the inside. Now, taking a look back here, it almost feels like it's a little bit of a larger amount of space, but it's actually a little bit bit smaller than the Trax. We're talking 25.3 cubic feet of space. I think the advantage of the Trax is that extra 4 inches of space back there. So even though it's a little bit shorter, it's a little bit longer, and that's where you win that cargo volume. But it's a pretty nice amount of space back here for a subcompact crossover. Not too much to report. You have a little light over there on the right-hand side, and then a little compartment over here on the left and the right. Underneath this floor, you also have a spare tire, and I'd say a little bit more space around it to store little things here and there if you would like to. Now, you can fold down this second row seat by pulling on this tab and pushing this forward, and with the second row down, you have slightly more cubic feet of space than the Trax. We're talking 54.3 cubic feet of space behind the first row. Now, in terms of safety tech here, they're pretty much identical. They both come with Chevy's Safety Assist, which is automatic emergency braking, front pedestrian braking. You've got lane keep assist, lane departure warning. You've also got forward collision alert. Now, the main difference between these two is the Trax only comes with 6 airbags versus the Trailblazer comes with 10 airbags. Also, cruise control is standard on both of these. In terms of warranty, they're both identical as well because they're both Chevy products. You got 3-year, 36,000 mile bumper to bumper limited warranty, 5-year, 60,000 mile powertrain warranty. All right, next up, let's talk about pricing. And that's really the main difference between these two. The Trax is a little bit more affordable. The starting price of the Trax is $20,400. The Trailblazer, on the other hand, is a little bit more expensive at a starting price of $23,100. Now, since both these vehicles are not the base entry-level trims, but the 1LT trim, let's take a look at what these particular vehicles cost. So this Chevy Trax with the 1LT trim is $24,280 versus this Chevy Trailblazer in the LT trim is about $28,080. All right, so to finish off this video, which of these two would I recommend you should buy? Well, personally, I kind of like the interior and the styling of the Trax a little bit more than the Trailblazer. The Trailblazer was a little bit more normal, more conservative, versus the Trax is a little bit more fun on the inside. Now, I do like the fact that Trailblazer in the same trim level, being the 1LT, comes with more features. That said, personally, I would buy the higher trim level of the Trax, which would still be a little bit more affordable than the Trailblazer, but have some of those additional cool features like the wireless charging, like the heated seats and the heated steering wheel. Those are all things you can get on the Trax, and you're still going to be saving a little bit more money as compared to the Trailblazer. You also have what feels to be a little bit more space on the inside because it is a longer vehicle. However, if I needed to have an all-wheel drive car, unfortunately the Trax would be disqualified, and that is when I would pick the Trailblazer because this is really one of the most affordable all-wheel drive vehicles you can buy. But let me know your thoughts between the Chevy Trax and the Chevy Trailblazer. Which of these two would you buy and why? I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button, and like I said, subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on all of the weekly videos. Also, check me out on all the social media at SchwayZ_. Until next time, everybody, I hope you stay SchwayZ, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.